Sometimes even the most critically acclaimed video games can leave players perplexed. From bizarre gameplay mechanics to dramatic tonal shifts that make gamers scratch their heads, these titles prove that you don't necessarily have to get a video game to have fun playing it. Let's take a look at some of the most beloved titles that gamers will probably never completely understand.
A tortoise is right twice a day. Shake on it, partner.
What does that mean?
Yes.
I don't get it. What does that mean?
Kingdom Hearts. Disney and Square Enix's brainchild, Kingdom Hearts, has no right to be as fun as it is, combining magical worlds straight out of Disney's most beloved films with fast-paced, action-packed gameplay. Understanding Kingdom Hearts' convoluted plot, however, means completing every game in the series, which span 5 different consoles and play fast and loose with chronological order. For example, playing the first Kingdom Hearts and then continuing on to Kingdom Hearts 2 means you've missed out on plot points that can only be found in the Game Boy Advance exclusive Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which takes place between them. To make things even more confusing, another semi-direct prequel to Kingdom Hearts 2, Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2, was released 3 years after the second main game in the series, meaning characters who play pivotal parts in Kingdom Hearts 2 weren't properly introduced until 3 years after their debut.
Yes. I still don't get it.
It's cool, Tom Hanks. We get it. Well, kinda. And only thanks to hardcore fans who put together game order suggestions, timelines, and in-depth explanations. The internet ain't always such a bad place after all. Killer 7. Killer 7 is less of a video game and more of a postmodern experiment in ultra-violence, complete with disjointed dialogue straight out of David Lynch's playbook, and a dreamlike plot centering around immortal beings and demonic terrorists. The 2005 release of Killer 7 marked the moment creator Goichi Suda, better known by his nickname Suda51, managed to sneak an art house neo-noir into the mainstream market.
What's a country? Who are the people? What are politicians?
At first, Killer 7 was heavily criticized for flaunting its style-over-substance approach and bland, on-rails gameplay. Other critics were even less impressed, with Stuff claiming, "At best, playing the game is like having someone shout in your ear for 15 hours straight. At worst, it's like getting a high colonic with balsamic vinegar." As is the case with most art, appreciation for Suda51's genius came years later, as gamers collectively reflected upon the bizarre, blood-soaked title with a new fondness. Deadly Premonition. Suda51 isn't the only video game auteur willing to take risks. Hidetaki Suehiro, aka Swery65, is the brains behind the survival horror game Deadly Premonition. Upon release, the title proved so divisive that critics couldn't decide whether it was an artistic triumph or an abysmal failure. But mixed reviews weren't the only thing troubling the misunderstood title.
A small traditional North American town close to the Canadian border. However, that peaceful town is shattered by a terrible crime, the murder of a local girl.
Sound familiar? Deadly Premonition wore its Twin Peaks influence on its sleeve. One glance at the director's cut trailer is all a fan needs to find countless similarities between the two supernatural mysteries. In fact, it took so much inspiration from the show that its original beta incarnation, Rainy Woods, was initially frozen pending a sizable graphical and narrative overhaul. The title was eventually reworked to avoid criticisms that it had ripped off David Lynch's cult classic series, and for better or for worse, Deadly Premonition would go on to become the definitive so bad it's good game, thanks to last-gen graphics, clunky controls, and a campy B-movie story that saw its protagonist following clues he discovered in his coffee. Eventually, the compelling tale of Agent Francis York Morgan would go on to inspire everything from board games to sandwich recipes, but not before earning a world record for most critically polarizing survival horror game. Chrono Cross. When Chrono Cross was released for the PS1 in 1999, longtime fans of its predecessor, Chrono Trigger, were baffled, to say the least. Gamers expecting an uplifting tale of triumph in the vein of Trigger were ultimately disappointed by the sequel's failure or refusal to replicate the original game's appeal. Where Chrono Trigger garnered praise for its small cast of memorable characters and its fantastic quest across time, its successor introduced an entirely new cast of 45 heroes, along with an infamously bloated narrative that all but requires requires extra research to fully understand. Ditching triggers iconic art style by Dragon Ball Z creator Akira Toriyama, swapping out time travel for dimension-hopping mechanics, and reducing its main characters to ghosts who appear in 2 brief scenes only added perceived insult to injury. Since its controversial release, Chrono Cross seems to have finally received the attention it deserved back in the late 90s, amassing a cult following. But some die-hard fans still refuse to forgive the game's developers for flipping the script so damn hard. Dark Souls. The Souls games are prime examples of how gameplay and setting can coalesce to create breathtaking, interactive experiences. From Software's Gothic action RPG series has become notorious for its difficulty and for skipping traditional storytelling methods in favor of an environmental narrative. From crumbling architecture of a once beautiful land and grotesque monstrosities with descriptive names to item descriptions and the briefest of dialogue exchanges, each of these snippets of info contributes to the greater lore of the Souls series. Understanding the world of the Souls games is a collaborative experience, with gamers sharing their discoveries and theories with their fellow Unkindled in an effort to compile a cohesive canon. This level of commitment is typically reserved for only the most hardcore Souls fans, but that's the charm of the Souls series. It doesn't spoon-feed players. Instead, it smashes said spoon into 1,000 pieces and orders them to collect every fragment. Limbo. The game that launched 1,000 theories, Playdead's Limbo chronicles the journey of a young boy who may or may not be deceased as he searches for his sister who may or may not know she's deceased. Unlike many games as art that came before it, Deadly Premonition, Limbo garnered immediate universal praise for its macabre tone and minimalist narrative, which critics felt allowed players to interpret the game's events however they pleased. While a commercial and critical success, Limbo's open-ended plot and abrupt ending did leave something to be desired, namely the faintest narrative thread. Gamers continue to debate everything about the game's story, if one even exists under the surface. Director Arndt Jensen and Playdead CEO Dino Patti have remained tight-lipped about the game's story, particularly its ending, and the two have claimed that ambiguity is the whole point of the interactive adventure through the edges of their shadowy hellscape. In 2012, Jensen told Gamasutra, "All those people who enjoyed the open ending, that makes me happy because it was supposed to be an open ending. What it means, I don't want to talk about." Fair enough. Thanks for watching. Click the SVG icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.